Day 5 here, the coronavirus shutdown in Michigan with Make Shots training, not being able to train players right now, trying to give you shooting information, videos, blogs, to talk a little bit more about shooting the basketball. Today, we're going to talk about the first thing I assess and evaluate with all players, which is hand placement on the ball. Tomorrow, I'm going to repost all 4 of the videos from this week so you can take a peek at ones you might have missed. So why is hand position first? Well, the way that the player's hand connects to the ball is where every shooting motion begins. And if we trace a lot of errors backwards, a lot of times we can come back to hand placement on the ball and see where a mistake might be. Shooting coach Dave Love says the center of your hand needs to shoot the center of the ball at the center of the rim. That's not a shooting coach philosophy, that's just simple physics and geometry. Finding the center of the ball is easy. You see there's the valve right is in the center, and we can tell right there that's the center of the ball. When I have camps, I ask kids all the time, what's the center of your hand? When you take your hand and you spread it out like we need to when we shoot the ball, and we make an L here and not a J, where's the center of your hand? About 80-90% of kids think the center of their hand is their middle finger. And because they think that, they often are not starting with proper ball coverage. So Allie's gonna come over here, and I'm just gonna do something I do at all camps, which is to measure her hand. So here's her hand. You can see it spread out really wide. And even when we have camps, I'll even bring this tape measure to camp. So I'm gonna measure from her index finger to the outside of her thumb, which you can see is right at about 4.5 inches. And that's not even with as wide an L as she could have. And from her pinky to her index finger is about 4.25 inches. So you can see if I tried to use her middle finger to the thumb, it's like 6 inches, and between the pinky and the middle finger is like 3 inches. So that shows us and that tells us that the middle finger is truly not the center of our hand for almost all shooters that I've ever worked with. So having said that, what do we need to do, or what does that mean in terms of shooting the ball? Well, you have to assess how you're currently holding the ball. So when Allie comes over here, we shoot a lot of indexes. So what an index means is that we find the index finger, finds the valve, and then we have her hold it in the 2 position right here. What we're trying to see, does she have as much coverage on this half of the ball as she has on that half of the ball? You can see if she moves her middle finger here, we have way more coverage. You can see we have way more coverage on the inside of the ball than we have on the outside of the ball. So how can we tell, or what are some things that you might be able to tell to assess if you're shooting the center of the ball with the center of your hand? Here's 4 things. Number 1, if your elbow is really wide. How many of you out there have been told, tuck your elbow in, you got a chicken wing? Well, that's a little bit of a myth. You don't actually have an elbow problem, you have a hand placement problem, and here's how I can tell. If Allie's hand is way outside the ball, so you can see her hand is way on the outside of the ball. Take your left hand away. You can see if I let the ball down, it would just fall because her hand is so far on the outside of the ball. Because of that, look where her elbow is. Her elbow is really wide too. Well, now if she indexes the ball, go ahead and index the ball. Some people would argue she moved her elbow. I would argue she didn't move her elbow at all. All she did was find the index, the center of the ball. So if you have a really wide elbow, it's probably not an elbow issue. It's probably a middle of the ball issue. Second, when you get to the 2 spot right here, I have kids just tap on the ball in all ways. If you're tapping on the ball and it's going that way, that means you're too far on the outside. If you're on the outside, it's gonna fall right over. If you're way too far on the inside and I tap the ball, it's gonna fall over that way. So when you get to your 2 spot, be able to tap the ball both ways to see how stable the ball is. Number 3, guide hand impact. So when she goes to shoot the ball, go ahead and do a shooting motion. If this hand is really moving or turning or pushing, that probably means that this right hand started outside, and as she got to the top, the 2 hands converged to meet in the middle. So if that guide hand is doing a lot of work, it's likely because your right hand is so far outside. 4th, your shooting hand at finish. So when kids get to the top of their shot, go ahead and get to the top. If this hand goes way this way, it's probably because you were so far outside the ball at start. When you got to here, it actually ricochets off this hand and finishes this way. So 4 ways that you might be able to tell that you're not in the center of the ball. Where's your elbow? Where are you at the number 2 spot? What's the guide hand impact? and where's your shooting hand at finish? So last two questions before we finish up for today. Number one, can players still make shots if their hand isn't in the center of the ball? The answer is yes. All of those other timing elements have to be near perfect and be practiced religiously, but that can happen. You can be way on the outside of the ball, and as that shot comes up, timing allows perfectly for your two hands to work together. You can be inside and hold on long enough before that hand trails. You're just making shooting something that's really hard, shooting the basketball, even harder than it has to be. Second, can a player who has shot the ball one way hundreds of thousands of times change their hand placement? The answer to that is resoundingly yes. I've worked with players and have a plan for players on how they can truly get in the center of the ball. Player testimony, player video, player pictures that I can show you exactly that. These are the exact kind of things that we work on in Make Shots training. Contact me and we can make sure your starting point, which is the most important part of shooting, is truly solidified.